Infertile rancher bought a ranch for $1, then found a pregnant girl in the stable. The sun burned low over the red plains of Talera 9, a frontier planet forgotten by most of the Galactic Council. Dust devils spiraled across empty fields, carrying dry soil from one barren patch to another. Only a few scattered settlements remained, and most of them were barely more than wooden shacks with makeshift power generators. In the distance, the ruins of old terraforming machines hummed faintly, as if sighing at the loneliness of the world. A single transport landed near one of these ruins, stirring a cloud of rust-colored dust. The craft's engines hissed and cooled, and a man stepped down. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his sharp eyes, a long coat over practical work clothes, and a pair of worn boots scuffed by miles of travel. He carried only a small pack and a satchel, but his presence seemed larger than the equipment he brought. He was here to take ownership of a ranch that had been abandoned for years, a place rumored to be cursed, yet now his for only one credit. The man's name was Cade Riker. Years ago, he had been a Star Ranger, exploring new colonies and protecting frontier settlements. But an injury, combined with a medical condition that made him unable to have children, had forced him into early retirement. Life had become quieter, lonelier. He thought a ranch far from human society would be the perfect escape, a place to rebuild on his own terms. Cade rode slowly across the ranch land, studying the crumbling fences and the skeletal remains of buildings. The main house sat crooked and weather-worn, its windows dusty and opaque. A wind chime, half broken, rattled against the porch in the dry breeze. Most people would have felt dread here, but Cade only felt curiosity. There was a mystery to this land, and he liked mysteries. He dismounted near the barn, which was larger than expected. Its wood had aged gray and brittle, but the structure remained intact. Inside, the smell of dry hay mixed with faint traces of livestock. Cade ran a hand along the old stall doors, noting which hinges might need fixing and which planks were too weak to support a horse. As he moved further into the shadows of the barn, something shifted in the corner of his vision. A soft whimper reached his ears. Cade froze. No animal had made that sound. He crouched and moved carefully toward the source. In the hay, pressed against the far wall, a young woman sat shivering. She had smooth, pale skin with faint markings along her arms and face, unlike any human he had seen. Her hair, black as the void between stars, fell in waves around her shoulders. She was clearly pregnant, her belly rounded and vulnerable. The woman's eyes, wide and fearful, fixed on him immediately. Cade raised a hand slowly, keeping his movements calm. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, his voice low but steady. "You can trust me, at least for now." The woman shook her head, trembling. "They'll find me, they'll take me." Her voice was hoarse, and she pressed her hands to her stomach protectively. I can't go back." Cade studied her carefully. She looked exhausted, scared, and alone. Something told him she was telling the truth. He had spent years reading people in situations far more dangerous than a dusty barn. She needed help, and he could offer it. "All right," he said. "You can stay here for a little while. No one's going to hurt you while I'm around. Drink this." He handed her a metal canteen with water. Hesitantly, she took it, gulping down the liquid as if she hadn't had water in days. She finally spoke, voice trembling. I don't even know what planet this is." "Talera 9, Cade said, keeping his tone neutral. "Not much of a welcome, I know, but this ranch, it's yours to hide in if you need." The woman glanced around the barn, suspicion still in her eyes. Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Cade gave a faint shrug. "Doesn't matter, I've spent enough time alone. I know what it feels like to be hunted, or to feel like you don't belong. You can't always control who comes after you." She stayed silent, gripping her stomach tightly, but she didn't move to run. Cade knew the hesitation meant she was weighing her options, testing him, seeing if he was another threat. Night began to fall, and the sky over Talera 9 turned a dull orange, then deep violet. Stars twinkled faintly above, distant suns casting cold light across the plains. Cade stoked a small fire outside the barn, just enough to keep warm. He sat on a crate, eyes scanning the horizon. Settlers rarely came this far, but there were others, hunters, scavengers, corporate agents, who might notice unusual activity. The woman stayed inside the barn, eventually curling up in the hay. She whispered her name, Lyra. Cade nodded silently. No one else needed to know. Names were fragile in times like this. As the first hour of darkness passed, a soft hum resonated beneath the barn. Cade froze, his instincts alert. The floor beneath them vibrated lightly, and a thin blue glow started emanating from cracks in the wood. He recognized the technology instantly. It was not human, not fully. Talera 9 had been part of a failed alien terraforming project centuries ago, and some of the equipment here still worked. Cade touched the glowing panel. A holographic map appeared, showing the ranch and surrounding plains. Several points blinked in the distance, moving toward the ranch. Scouts or worse, he had not expected trouble so soon, but the land was alive with secrets. Lyra noticed him staring at the panel and whispered, "They're coming." "Yes," he said quietly. "But we're not going anywhere. You'll stay here safe, trust me." Her eyes filled with fear, but also something like hope. Cade realized she had no one else in the universe she could trust. It was a heavy burden to bear, but he didn't flinch. He had spent his life protecting others, and this time it was personal. The night deepened, and distant engines hummed faintly. Cade checked his weapons, simple rifles, a few grenades, and a plasma sidearm he rarely needed. Still, he knew the strength of the ranch would not be in firepower alone. He would use the terrain, the animals, and whatever old tricks he remembered from ranger days. Inside the barn, Lyra shifted closer to the corner, watching him carefully. Cade could feel her tension, but he stayed calm. Trust was fragile, and he knew pushing too hard would make her run. "We'll get through this," he said softly. "One night at a time, first you rest, then we plan." Outside, the wind carried faint mechanical sounds. Someone or something was approaching the ranch. Cade's eyes narrowed, but he did not panic. For decades, he had been trained for danger. He had faced pirates, mercenaries, and worse. A pregnant girl hiding in a barn on a forgotten planet would not be the end of him. The fire crackled. Lyra slowly lay back, still trembling but slightly more relaxed. Cade kept watch through the night, scanning the plains and listening for the faintest sound. Dawn would come soon, and with it, decisions that could change both of their lives. By the first light of morning, the ranch looked the same as it had the day before, but Cade knew nothing would ever be the same again. The discovery of Lyra, the glow beneath the barn, and the approaching forces meant that this land, bought for only one credit, was suddenly more valuable than he had ever imagined. It was no longer a lonely ranch for a man hiding from the galaxy. It was a refuge, a battlefield, and perhaps the start of a new life for both him and the girl he had just sworn to protect. Cade adjusted his hat, checked his rifles, and stepped into the dusted morning light. Somewhere in the plains, danger waited, but he would face it. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't alone, and he had a reason to fight. The morning sun rose over Talera 9, casting long shadows across the red plains. The air was dry, carrying the faint scent of metal and dust from the old terraforming machines scattered across the horizon. Cade Riker walked along the edge of the ranch, scanning the plains. The barn had become a quiet refuge overnight, but the faint hum beneath its floor reminded him that the land was more than it seemed. Inside the barn, Lyra had moved cautiously to a corner, her back against the wall. The hay crunched softly under her weight as she shifted, keeping her eyes on Cade. She had not spoken much since yesterday, only answering his questions in short, hesitant words. But her presence felt less like fear now and more like cautious trust. Cade could see the worry in her eyes, but also a spark of hope she had not felt for a long time. "Drink some water," Cade said, offering the canteen again. "We'll need to stay strong today." Lyra took the canteen, sipping slowly, and then set it aside. Why would anyone want to hurt me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cade sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Not everyone in the galaxy thinks like us. Some see people as tools or property, others want power. You carry something that makes you valuable to them, that's why they're after you." Lyra's eyes widened. She pressed her hands to her stomach protectively. "The child," she said. They'll use it." Cade nodded. He understood. He had known soldiers and families lost to greed and war. "Not if I can help it. We'll figure this out. First, we make sure you're safe here." They spent the morning checking the ranch. Fences were repaired, weak boards replaced, and the barn reinforced. Cade worked efficiently, his ranger training showing in every movement. Lyra watched, occasionally helping, though her hands were small and not used to heavy labor. Despite her fear, she seemed to appreciate the order and care he brought to the old ranch. As the day grew hotter, Cade led her to a small pond near the edge of the property. The water was surprisingly clear, reflecting the harsh sunlight. Lyra knelt by the edge, cupping her hands to drink. Cade stood behind her, scanning the distant plains. Movement flickered at the horizon, small, metallic shapes glinting in the sun. Scouts. They're close, Cade said, his voice steady but urgent. We need to be ready. Lyra froze, eyes wide. We can't fight them, she whispered. Cade shook his head. Not like this. But we can hide, set traps, and use the ranch to our advantage. You've already survived more than you know. We'll keep you alive. He led her back to the barn, showing her a small hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. It was enough space for her to rest and stay out of sight. Cade explained simple rules: stay quiet, don't move unless he tells her, and trust him. She nodded, though her hands shook slightly. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky, and Cade prepared defenses around the property. He used old ranger tricks, combining natural terrain with the remnants of alien technology beneath the barn. Sensors hummed faintly, creating invisible boundaries that would alert him to intruders. He set snares and diversion markers across the plains, ensuring any scout would be detected well before reaching the barn. When he returned inside, Lyra had moved closer to the hidden compartment, observing him with curiosity. "You've done this before," she said softly. Cade smiled faintly. "More times than I like to count. Being a ranger teaches you how to protect what matters. You matter now." Her cheeks flushed slightly and she looked away, focusing on the hay. Cade didn't press her. Trust had to grow naturally. As evening approached, the distant hum grew louder. Lyra stiffened. Cade moved to the barn door and peered out. A small squad of hover drones hovered above the plains, scanning methodically. They were fast, sleek, and clearly designed for tracking, not fighting. Cade knew he had to act carefully. He returned to the hidden compartment and whispered instructions to Lyra. "Stay here, don't move, keep calm, I'll handle this." The drones moved closer, sweeping the land with sensors. Cade stayed just out of sight, using shadows and the uneven terrain to stay hidden. He activated a small holographic device beneath the barn floor. It projected a faint energy field over the surrounding area, making it harder for scanners to detect life inside the barn. The drones hovered directly above, their lights scanning the property. Cade held his breath, keeping quiet. Time seemed to stretch, each second heavier than the last. Then one drone tilted, as if confused, and moved away. Another followed. Cade's heart pounded. The technology beneath the barn was old, alien, but it worked. Lyra peeked slightly from the corner. It worked," she whispered. Cade nodded. "For now, but they'll keep coming. We need a plan for when they try again." Night fell fully, and the stars lit the sky with a cold, distant light. Cade and Lyra shared a small meal, dried rations and water, while the barn remained quiet. The fire outside cast faint shadows, flickering against the walls. For a moment they simply sat in silence, the tension easing slightly. "I've never known anyone like you," Lyra said finally, her voice soft. Cade looked at her, curiosity in his eyes. "Like me? Strong, careful, but human. You don't just fight or hide, you protect." Cade felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years: pride. "I do what I can," he said quietly, "and right now, keeping you safe is all that matters." They spoke little after that, listening to the hum of the alien equipment beneath their feet. Cade knew the land itself held secrets, secrets worth more than the one credit he had paid. Somewhere beneath the barn, the remnants of ancient terraforming systems pulsed faintly. Cade could feel the energy shifting, responding to his presence and to Lyra's. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed from the barn's exterior. Cade froze. He motioned for Lyra to stay down. Moving silently, he approached the door. Outside, the fence had shifted slightly. Someone had tested the boundary. He crouched behind a post, rifle ready. Two scouts approached on hoverbikes, sleek machines built for speed. They paused, scanning the area. Cade waited, analyzing their movement. He could outsmart them, not with brute force, but with patience and cunning. Using a small device, he triggered a diversion, a set of metal cans and ropes rigged to fall with a loud crash. The scouts jumped, startled, and one lost balance, tipping slightly on the edge of a dune. Cade took note, planning his next move. The scouts adjusted, scanning again, but Cade remained hidden. He realized something important. This land, abandoned and forgotten, gave him an advantage. The plains, the hills, the barn, all of it could be used to protect Lyra. And she, in turn, brought something unique to the ranch. The child she carried was important, and protecting that child meant more than just survival. It meant a purpose Cade hadn't felt in years. Hours passed, and the scouts eventually left, frustrated. Cade waited until the lights of their hoverbikes disappeared over the horizon. Only then did he return to Lyra. She was pale but relieved. They won't stop, she whispered. No, Cade admitted. But neither will we. We have something they don't, a home and each other. For now, that's enough. He settled in for the night, sitting near the barn's entrance. Lyra rested in the hidden compartment, exhausted but safe. Cade watched the stars, thinking about the days to come. Protecting her would not be easy. Forces across the galaxy would try again, stronger, faster, more dangerous. But Cade was ready. He had survived worse. And now he had someone to fight for. As sleep finally tugged at him, Cade knew the ranch would never be the quiet refuge he imagined. It was already a battleground, a sanctuary, and the start of a story larger than either of them. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. And that, he decided, was worth every danger the frontier could throw at him. The next morning, the plains of Talera 9 were quiet, but Cade Riker knew silence could be deceptive. From years patrolling frontier worlds, he understood that danger often arrived without warning. The ranch, once a simple plot of land bought for a single credit, had become a sanctuary, but also a trap. Lyra emerged from the barn cautiously. She was pale from worry but determined. The child she carried stirred slightly as she moved, reminding Cade of the stakes. "We need to plan," she said softly. "They'll come back, stronger this time." Cade nodded, wiping dust from his coat. "We'll be ready. The ranch isn't just land, it's an advantage. Hills, fences, barns, even the old alien tech beneath us. We just need to use it right." Together, they walked the perimeter. Cade pointed out weak spots in the fences, areas where the terrain could hide them, and natural choke points where anyone trying to approach could be slowed down. Lyra listened intently, absorbing every detail. Even though she had never lived on a ranch before, her instincts were sharp. Her species had survival skills honed over generations, and Cade began to see why she had made it this far. "You're smart," Cade said quietly. "Better than most would be at this age." Lyra's cheeks flushed. "I've had to learn fast," she admitted. "Life doesn't wait." By midday, Cade had reinforced the barn further. He installed extra boards and set small alarm triggers along the doors. The alien systems beneath the barn responded to his presence, humming softly. Cade was beginning to understand them better, realizing they could act as a shield, not just a monitor. As the sun reached its zenith, distant engines whined above the plains. Cade froze, scanning the horizon. Multiple ships appeared, hovering in formation. Unlike the scouts before, these were larger armed and clearly meant for an assault. Cade's jaw tightened. This was no longer a simple test, this was an attack. "Stay inside," he ordered. Lyra nodded, retreating to her hidden corner. Cade grabbed his rifles and moved to the barn doorway, eyes sharp. The attackers were fast, landing in a small clearing, scanning the area for signs of life. Cade took a deep breath. Years of experience as a ranger had prepared him for this. He did not panic. Instead, he used the terrain and the ranch to his advantage. Rocks, fences, and old hay bales became tools. He activated one of the alien devices beneath the barn, creating a faint energy field over the property that distorted scanners and slowed the attackers' approach. The first group of soldiers advanced cautiously, unaware that Cade had set traps along their path. Metal snares, buried in sand, tripped their foot sensors. One of the soldiers stumbled, giving Cade a chance to fire a precise shot, disabling a hoverbike without harming the pilot. The attackers realized they were being targeted by someone who knew the land intimately. Inside the barn, Lyra whispered, "You're amazing." Cade kept his focus on the battlefield. "We survive by knowing our home better than they do. Remember that." The attackers regrouped and tried a different approach, sending drones over the hill to flank the barn. Cade anticipated this, triggering diversionary holograms that projected multiple false images of himself across the fields. The drones hesitated, scanning the illusions. Cade used the confusion to set additional traps, ensuring the drones would be forced back or disabled. Hours passed in a tense dance. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the plains in deep red and orange. The attackers, realizing the ranch was well defended, paused. Cade knew this was only a temporary reprieve. They would return with reinforcements, more weapons, and better strategies. But for now, he had bought them time. After the skirmish, Cade returned to Lyra. She was pale, exhausted, but unhurt. Cade offered her water and a small ration of dried food. She took it gratefully. I didn't think we'd make it," she said quietly. "You did," Cade replied. "You're stronger than you realize, and so is this place. We're not done yet, but we survived today. That counts for something." As night fell, Cade and Lyra sat near a small fire outside the barn. The stars shone cold and distant above, but the firelight cast a warm glow between them. Cade watched Lyra, noticing how her expression had changed from fear to cautious determination. She was learning, adapting, and surviving. "I don't even know who to trust anymore," Lyra said, voice low. "Everyone wants something from me or my child." Cade's eyes softened. "Trust is earned, not given, but you can trust me. I've spent too many years alone to let someone I care about face danger unprotected." She looked at him, the first genuine smile appearing despite her exhaustion. "You really mean that?" "I do," he said simply. "We're in this together, and no one will take that from us." The night was quiet, but Cade knew it would not last. Forces across the galaxy would try again. The child she carried was more than just a baby. It was a symbol of hope, survival, and new beginnings. Protecting that child meant protecting a future. Cade spent hours reviewing the ranch layout, planning traps, and strategizing. He knew the alien systems beneath the barn were his secret advantage. They could detect movement, interfere with scanners, and create small distortions in energy fields. Cade realized he could use these systems to funnel attackers into traps and protect Lyra even when he was away. Lyra, meanwhile, rested and tended to herself, occasionally asking questions about the ranch, the plains, and the strange alien technology beneath them. Cade answered patiently, teaching her what she needed to know to stay safe. They were forming a bond based on trust, respect, and shared survival, not romance, though there was a quiet tension between them. It was a partnership forged by necessity and courage. The next day, Cade decided it was time to test the ranch defenses. Using the alien tech and simple traps, he simulated an attack, observing how the energy fields and traps worked together. Lyra watched from the barn, learning silently. "You think of everything," she said, amazed. Cade shrugged. "Years of experience, plus the land helps me. Talera 9 has secrets, and I plan to use them." As they worked, Cade noticed subtle signs of more movement in the plains, small shapes, almost hidden in the dust. He signaled to Lyra, and they both crouched. From a distance, a larger ship descended, sleek and armed. The attackers had returned, more serious this time. Cade's jaw tightened. They would not give up easily. He turned to Lyra. "We need to stay calm and follow the plan. Trust the land, trust the traps, and trust me." "We'll make it through this." She nodded, eyes wide but resolute. "I trust you." Cade felt a sense of purpose he had not known in years. Protecting Lyra and her child had awakened something inside him, something stronger than his fear, stronger than loneliness. It was responsibility, courage, and the will to fight. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the plains. Cade checked his weapons one last time, ensuring everything was ready. Lyra retreated to her hiding spot, holding her belly protectively. Cade watched the approaching ship, the shadows growing longer with every second. This time the battle would be bigger, more dangerous. But Cade was ready. The ranch, the barn, and the land beneath them were more than just structures. They were allies. And he was not alone anymore. As the first lights of the ship flickered against the horizon, Cade whispered to himself, "Let them come. We'll be ready." In the silence before the storm, Cade and Lyra prepared for the night ahead, knowing that survival would demand everything they had. And somewhere in the plains, the future they protected. A child that could change everything, waited quietly, unaware of the battles to come. The sky over Talera 9 was a deep, bruised purple as night fell, streaked with the orange glow of distant fires. Cade Riker crouched behind a ridge, rifle in hand, scanning the plains. The attackers had returned, larger and better armed than before. This time they brought soldiers, drones, and hovercraft, all moving with precise coordination. Cade's jaw tightened. The ranch, his home and Lyra's sanctuary, was about to become a battlefield. Inside the barn, Lyra pressed herself against the wall, her hands resting protectively over her belly. She could feel the child moving, and her heart ached with worry. Cade had promised to protect them, and she believed him, but she knew the attackers would not stop easily. She whispered a quiet prayer to herself, hoping that Cade's plans would hold. Cade checked the alien tech beneath the barn once more. The energy fields glowed faintly, distorting scanners and sending false readings to the approaching ships. Traps were in place along the perimeter, snares and diversions ready to slow and confuse any intruders. The ranch itself would fight for them, if only they survived long enough to use it. The first wave of attackers arrived swiftly, descending from their hovercraft. Cade fired precise shots, disabling drones and sending the soldiers scattering into the traps he had set. Metal snares snagged hover boots, small explosions lit the planes, and holographic illusions projected multiple images of him across the landscape. Confusion spread among the attackers. They were well trained, but Cade knew the land better. Lyra watched from the barn, eyes wide, heart pounding. She had never seen anything like this. Her fear was tempered by awe. Cade was not just defending the ranch, he was orchestrating it like a living weapon. Each shot, each trap, each diversion was perfectly timed. But the attackers adapted quickly. They regrouped and tried a flanking maneuver, sending a larger hovercraft around the ridge. Cade anticipated this. He activated a hidden device beneath the barn, causing the ground to shift slightly and emit bursts of light. The hovercraft faltered, momentarily blinded, and Cade's trap slowed it further. Still, he knew it was only a matter of time before they found a way through. Inside the barn, Lyra's worry turned to panic as the building shook from nearby explosions. Cade yelled from outside, "Stay down, don't move until I say." She obeyed, pressing herself against the floorboards, trying not to cry. The child inside her stirred with every tremor, and she whispered soothing words to keep both of them calm. Hours passed in a tense standoff. Cade moved with precision, taking down attackers one by one, leading them into traps and using the alien energy fields to disorient them. Sweat and dust coated him, but he did not falter. He was determined to protect Lyra and the child at all costs. Then, a new threat arrived. A massive ship, heavily armed and shielded, descended from orbit. Cade recognized it immediately. This was no scout or small strike team. This was Command, the faction's main force. If they breached the ranch, there would be no escape. Cade's mind raced. He had only one chance. The alien tech beneath the barn had one final function, something he had not dared to try until now. It could create a temporary shield, strong enough to repel attacks, but using it might alert the attackers to the ranch's true power. He had no choice. He activated the system. A dome of shimmering energy enveloped the ranch, deflecting laser fire and halting the advancing soldiers. Inside the barn, Lyra felt the hum of energy surrounding them. The vibrations ran through the floor, but she was safe. She looked toward Cade, seeing him silhouetted against the glowing shield, determined and fearless. For the first time, she truly believed they could survive. The attackers pressed their assault, but every attempt was thwarted by Cade's traps, his rifle, and the alien shield. Explosions lit the night sky, but the ranch held firm. Cade realized that the attackers were underestimating not just him, but the land itself. The ranch had become an ally, its secrets activated by his knowledge and determination. Hours turned into a grueling battle, and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm Cade. Sweat stung his eyes, muscles ached, and his breath came in heavy gasps. Yet he could not stop, not until Lyra and the child were safe. He fired, repositioned, and set additional traps, every movement precise and calculated. Finally, the attackers realized they could not breach the ranch. Their numbers were reduced, morale broken, and the alien tech made further attempts nearly suicidal. Slowly they retreated, leaving the plains silent once more. Cade lowered his rifle, muscles trembling from tension and exhaustion. He had done it. The ranch, Lyra, and the child were safe, for now. Inside the barn, Lyra emerged, tears streaking her dusty face. She rushed to Cade, embracing him tightly. You did it," she whispered. "We're alive." Cade held her carefully, aware of her pregnancy. "We survived," he said quietly. "Together, that's what matters." They settled by the fire, the first quiet moment in what felt like days. Lyra rested against him, exhausted but relieved. Cade watched the stars, the horizon now calm, the distant fires fading. For the first time since the battle began, he allowed himself to breathe. Days passed slowly. The attackers did not return, and the ranch grew quiet once more. Cade and Lyra worked together to repair damage, tend animals, and reinforce the barn. Their bond deepened, grounded in trust, respect, and shared survival. Lyra taught Cade small survival tricks from her species, and he shared ranching skills and lessons learned from his years as a ranger. They complemented each other perfectly. As the weeks passed, Lyra's belly grew, a constant reminder of the life they protected. Cade often found himself gazing at her, thinking of the future. He had long given up hope of fatherhood, yet now he felt a sense of purpose stronger than he had ever known. Protecting this child, ensuring it survived, gave him a reason to live fully again. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant orange and violet, Lyra went into labor. Cade stayed by her side, calm but focused, guiding her through each contraction. The barn was quiet, the alien tech providing subtle illumination, its energy a protective presence. The child's first cries echoed softly through the barn, a sound Cade would never forget. Lyra held the baby in her arms, tears of relief streaming down her face. Cade looked at them both, feeling a surge of emotion he had buried for years. He had fought across planets, faced enemies countless times, yet this moment, this life, was more precious than anything he had ever protected. The child was healthy, a blend of human and alien traits, a living symbol of survival, hope, and new beginnings. Lyra smiled at Cade, exhausted but radiant. "We did it," she whispered. "Yes," Cade said, his voice full of awe. "We did." In the days that followed, the ranch became more than just land. It was a home, a refuge, and a symbol. Settlers from nearby colonies, inspired by Cade's bravery and Lyra's resilience, came seeking guidance, shelter, and safety. The ranch, once abandoned and sold for a single credit, now thrived as a sanctuary for those who valued life, freedom, and trust. Cade watched the plains from the porch, holding the child in his arms while Lyra stood beside him. The stars twinkled above, distant suns casting faint light over the land. He realized that life on Talera 9 had changed forever, not because of the ranch itself, but because of the choices he made, the risks he took, and the bond he had formed with Lyra and the child. For Cade Riker, the ranch had given him something he never thought he would have again: family, purpose, and hope. The plains were quiet, but he knew the universe would always bring challenges. Still, for now, he allowed himself to enjoy the moment, knowing that he had protected what mattered most. The sun rose the next morning, painting the horizon with soft gold light. Cade placed the child carefully in a small crib inside the barn, looking down at the tiny hands and delicate features. Lyra smiled, brushing a strand of hair from the baby's face. Cade felt a quiet pride and satisfaction. They had survived impossible odds. They had built a life where hope seemed lost. The ranch, the barn, and the plains of Talera 9 were no longer just abandoned land. They were a testament to courage, resilience, and the strength of trust between two people who refused to give up. Cade adjusted his hat and stood, glancing across the horizon. Somewhere beyond the plains, the galaxy stretched endlessly, filled with dangers and wonders alike. But for him, for Lyra, and for the child they protected, Talera 9 was home, a place worth fighting for, a place worth living for. And as the wind whispered through the red grasses, Cade knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger than any force the universe could throw at them.